If I read the instructions, I probably wouldn't have this much embarrassment setting it up. Hey guys, today I've got a new indoor camera, which is C22 by Imilab. And if you think that name sounds familiar, you're right, because a couple of weeks ago I covered the outdoor version of the Imilab IP camera, which nearly got me in trouble. If you want to know more about this, then this video is probably there for you. But today we're talking about this. I've been using this camera inside of this room for a couple of weeks, and I think I'm ready to pass my judgment. So let's start with what you're actually getting. Let's open it up and see what's actually inside and how does it look like and whether it's any good. So we have some instructions. We have a cable. What cable is that? We have a USB type. It's a micro USB. Come on. USB type C would be nice. We have a mounting, quick mounting clip, which means you can include this camera in, like, onto a ceiling or, you know, attach it to something. And we have a camera itself. There's nothing else in the box. The camera is made from alright plastic. It's definitely not an outdoor enclosure. You have a rotational base which rotates, yeah, almost 360 degrees. You have an up and down SD card slot support at the bottom and speaker at the back. That's pretty much everything I can tell you right now. So first I'll have to take a closer look, mount it and start testing it, which I'm going to do now. The C22 is a pretty standard design for the indoor cameras. It has a round dome that rotates 360 degrees around the base and a swivel to allow you to look down and up. Now here's a small tip that if you place the camera way too high, you can't really go and look that much down. So if you want to do this and have the camera mounted somewhere up there, my advice is to flip it around, and that allows you to have a better field of view. That's it. Now this is a 3K camera, so that's the resolution of the video stream. I found 3K to be, well, apart from being good, it's also, I think it's a little bit more than it's supposed to be. I'm perfectly fine for indoors cameras to be either 1080p or 2K, because realistically speaking, you don't really need that much resolution for those short distance, but hey, I'm not going to hold it against it. Now it comes also with a two-way audio. There is a speaker at the back of the dome and a microphone in or just below the lens. Now if you flip the lens all the way to the up, you will see a micro SD card port and a reset. Now it supports the SD cards up to 256 gigabytes, which will give you enough storage for a couple of days worth of storing stuff on here. Obviously, because it streams in 3K, that storage is going to be slightly more used, so be advised about that and pick your card accordingly. Other than that, there isn't really much to talk about the design because it's pretty standard, but I am going to have a moan about the USB port. Now it's 2023, end of it really, and this is micro USB port. What happened to USB Type-C? Come on! Well, the redeeming factor is that the included cable is actually pretty long. That works over the USB, so you'll expect it to use the USB to power this up. And this is what gets me, that the inclusion of the old USB port is slightly confusing, because this camera uses Wi-Fi to connect, and it supports Wi-Fi 6, which is pretty much a new standard, or newish standard, and my Rütters are supported. So that means that you'll be able to take advantage of the bandwidth freedom that comes with it and actually don't clog your local Wi-Fi with the stream from the camera. So if you're planning on using multiple of those, that's actually not a bad choice, right? But yeah, that's pretty much everything that you should know from a specification. So let's get that connected and let's dive into interface and see what we can actually make out of it. After playing with the previous camera from Imilab, I foolishly assume I can just, take this camera, connect it to Imilab Home app and be done with it. But once I actually tried that, the camera screamed at me for doing so and advised me to use Mi Home, which is okay, especially that I already have Mi Home devices like my DLP projector, which I really like. There's a video there for you if you're interested, and a couple of smart cleaners that are using Mi Home as well.
So I wasn't against adding another device to my Mi Home ecosystem, but right now the Imilab C22 isn't supported by their own WAP, and I think they released that in a partnership with Xiaomi Mi Home application instead, which also means we're going to be looking at different feature set once we dive into the app. The first impressions were good. My stream on a local network loaded within, well, less than a second, which I guess are going to contribute to the Wi-Fi 6 connectivity, because I have Wi-Fi 6 router all around my flat, and well, I think that's the first benefit of that technology in this household. And while the card interface was limited to what I could do, I couldn't really move the camera or do anything specific, it was nice to have an option just quickly click on a stream, see what's up, and then disable it without actually going into the card. So yeah, kudos there. Once you open, however, the device card, this is where you have all the options. You can press the button and start two-way conversation, you can pan the camera around, and you have quick options to either take a screenshot or record the footage that you're currently seeing. Nice, easy to access and handy, so I have no problems there. And since we've got that 3K stream available, let's start talking about the audio and video quality. I have to say that the image quality is actually really good. Obviously we have 3K resolution, which improves things, but they also don't try to compress stuff that much, although the compression is still visible, because I think they are just trying not to populate your SD card immediately with a 3K resolution worth of file sizes. But where this camera actually shines is wide dynamic range. Even when pointed against a bright window or against the lights, it was providing me with surprisingly lots of details where different cameras, different IP cameras I've tested before would fall flat. So that was definitely a plus. And when you zoom in the frame, you quickly discover that 3K actually stands for something, and you can get that extra little level of details without, getting everything too pixelated. At night, the story is quite similar. This camera comes with advanced AI color mode, which means it will switch back and forth between having infrared black and white image when there is no sufficient light, and try to colorize an image or stream from that camera when there is sufficient light to do it. In my scenarios, it was switching back to the black and white mode in the middle of the dark because there was no light whatsoever. But as soon as I found a little bit of light, it was switching back to a color mode, and both were detailed enough to make out what's going on and have absolutely no problem recognizing what's wherever in front of the camera. What's really disappointing is the microphone quality. I mean, the microphone quality itself, it's okay. However, as soon as I'm trying to capture it using the app, it degrades quite significantly. So I've made this recording using a screen capture instead to see if it's going to be any better. While investigating the audio and image quality, I also had a look at the files stored on SD card. The good news is that the files stored on SD cards are easily readable. You can open any video player like VLC and play back. The files are in 3K of resolution and 20 frames per second. Individual files are approximately 130 megabytes big in file size and contain approximately, 15 minutes of video. The bad news is that the files aren't really stored in folders by date, so they all kind of dumped into a root directory of the card, and you'll have a harder time finding what you need. It's going to be much easier to use the app to export the fragment of the video that you need than going and traversing through all the files that you have on your SD card. It's definitely possible, but it's just slightly more difficult than it's supposed to be. Now that you know that you can store the files on the camera itself, let's talk about other options to store the files, because there are some. Now, obviously, we have a cloud. You can sign up for Xiaomi Cloud, and you can store your videos in Xiaomi Cloud. But that's not the only option. If you already have the SD card installed in your camera, you will have also access to the local NAS storage. Now that means that whatever is stored on the camera is going to be mirrored to your NAS storage, so you could access it this way, which is definitely handy. Now the problem with that was that even though I have a NAS storage which is visible across my various computers, I was not able to find it. What I did find using that NAS interface in the camera was a shares created on the Windows machine, so my computer or my other computers, they popped in just fine. So I'm not 100% sure what is the requirement for that to be visible on my camera, but I come across a long time ago another device that gave me similar issues, so I'll have to look into my Samba configuration to kind of make it slightly easier to be seen by other devices. But yes, it is possible to synchronize your storage from the SD card with your NAS storage and have it backed up this way. Despite the promising start with the NAS option, I haven't seen any options for RTSP support. So if you want to capture your stream from the camera using third-party hardware, well, you might be out of luck. I haven't seen any documentation that would state otherwise, so as far as I'm concerned right now, no RTSP. It's a shame. The next topic is obviously the detection, and we have a couple of options in here, including AI detection. And I know AI detection is a fancy word for basically triggering or motion, but this camera offers 2 extra things. So let's start with human detection and automatic following. I have absolutely no problem with this discovering humans. That works, I think, pretty well. However, the following of the human inside the room can be a little bit spotty. It's not the most responsive camera, so it'll take a little bit more of time to rotate the camera, but it's very silent, so you barely can hear it. And while you can outrun this camera, you probably, in the normal circumstances, you wouldn't be able to, and the camera would be able to track you. But what I found is that if you remain stationary, the camera has a bad habit of constantly self-adjusting yourself on any micro movement. And yes, you can't hear it, but if you look at the camera just constantly wiggling around, it gets a little bit annoying, and I wasn't really conscious of that fact. If you want the camera to be a little bit more sensitive and respond not just for humans, you've got the typical motion detection, in which if anything moves in front of the camera, it will trigger correct notification. Now, that side, you still have extra features like zone detection and also audio detection. So the camera advertises responsiveness to screaming baby or pets, but I don't have screaming babies and pets, and I was not able to verify that bit. But I screamed at the camera to amusement of my neighbors upstairs, and that worked definitely. So yay, I guess kudos for that. There is one more cool option available, which is face detection. So the camera in theory is able to recognize faces, and you could use that for triggers for your home automation. But there is a catch. For this to work, you'll have to have Xiaomi Mi Cloud enabled. So without the subscription, the feature isn't available, and since I don't have a subscription, I wasn't able to test it, unfortunately. But if you are interested in that and you don't mind getting Xiaomi Cloud, then that option is definitely possible. That's the second camera that actually have a face detection available. I've covered one from Agara in this video, which had face detection available without a subscription, so maybe go check out that video if you are interested as well, especially that this camera is also a Zigbee hub. Going back to this camera, and another disappointing news. When you get the detection notification on your Android phone, you get the trigger type and the timestamp, but you don't have a image preview, which is so annoying. It's a second camera from Imilab struggling with this. It would be nice to have a picture of whatever triggered that notification, so you could quickly dismiss it or go and check it out, but unfortunately you'll have to go to the app and figure out what just happened. Thankfully, there are a couple of things that the Xiaomi version solved it right. Now, the thumbnails on the notification list, they do pop out, and you'll be able to see in the thumbnails what activated this camera, which is plus. And you have a very handy timeline that allows you to see when in time those different triggers occurred. Now, you have also handy selection filters that allow you to add or remove the events from the timeline. So especially if you have multiple events in a short period of time, it's very handy to use those to determine which event you should be checking out. I like this feature, and I wish more cameras would have those filters too. So in conclusion, it's a shame that face detection is linked to the subscription to Mi Cloud. It's one of those things, right? I could totally see myself using face trigger to activate different events. Now at $59.99 US, it's not the most expensive indoor camera, and you're definitely paying for extra resolution and support for the Wi-Fi 6. So if those things seem enticing to you, then in the video description you'll find a link to this camera and a review, and also you'll find more information in my article. As for now, guys, big thanks for watching. You know, I do not have a posting schedule, so if you want to know what's gonna be next, then, well, you know how YouTube works, I'm not going to explain you all that. There are a couple of social media links listed right now on the screen, so go check it out, start a conversation with me, just say hi. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.